everyone, Lauren, the Church Witch here. I just wanted to do a quick little talk on natal astrology. So I don't know how quick it will actually be. I keep saying quick and then it's like 20 minutes long. I hope it doesn't end up being 20 minutes long because I don't have that much time. But I've had a lot of people asking me a lot of questions about like how to even look at your natal chart. And so one of the first things I want to tell you about astrology is that it's literally like a lifetime of study. It is really intense, it's really complicated, and it's multi-layered. So the very first thing that I always recommend people understand about themselves when they first get into astrology is three things, okay? One is your sun sign. Your sun sign is when you were born. It's like the month, right? So the sun typically stays in the same constellation, which is the Aries constellation, Scorpio, whatever the zodiac sign is, for somewhere between 28 to 31 days. So when you say your sun sign, it's like you were born within somewhere around this time. Your moon sign, the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So your moon sign could be very different than your sun sign. And then your rising sign or your ascendant is where the what was on the horizon when you were born. And that is figured out by what time you were born and where you were born. So in order to create your own natal chart, you need a couple of things. You need to know your day of birth, like your actual day and year of birth, as close as you can get for an exaction of time of birth, and then location of birth. So there's all different kinds of ways you can do it. One of the main ways I use is time passages. There's an amazing app. There's another app out there called like CoStar, and then astro.com is free, and that's a really amazing place to start too. Now, the nice thing about the time passages app is that you can like click on aspects and you can just start reading about yourself. Whereas like if you look on something like astro.com or time passages, you're going to have the natal wheel show up in front of you and you're going to be like, I don't know what that means. So I literally cannot recommend having a professional astrologer read your chart enough, at least the first time, because they're going to kind of like help piece it together for you. It's incredibly layered. It's incredibly complex. But if you can at least start to understand those three parts of your psyche, then it will really help. So your sun is very personal to why you incarnated here. It tells you a lot about like what you came here to do. Your moon is your emotional filter and how you tend to respond to things very instinctually. Like it's your most instinctual response. And then your rising sign is basically your appearance and the way that you find yourself best. So the way that I tend to teach all the things that I teach is from myself, right? So as I liberate myself, I liberate others. It's one of my like dharmic sayings is first I liberate myself, then others. And so for me, my sun sign is Libra. I was born on September 30th. I am a Libra. My sun is conjunct Mercury, which is communication. And both of them are in the 11th house of large group mass communication and like group think, essentially. So I literally came here to really function well as a large group facilitator and a large group speaker, which really and truly, if you put me in front of a large group of people, I come on into my brightest self. I'm really, really good at large group communications. However, my rising sign is Scorpio. So rising sign or your ascendant tells you who you really are by yourself and also how you look, your appearance. So yes, most Libras look like a golden retriever, really pretty, balanced, like nice aesthetic, pretty fair, you know, like princessy, think princess, right? Sparkles, pink. And I'm a Scorpio, which like I'm wearing all black, you know, like my hair is black. I look like a witch, which Scorpios are usually very witchy. And I'm really drawn to shadow work. Like I really am. So I'm grateful. I'm always grateful for my Libra sun because my Libra sun keeps me somewhat light and happy. And it's funny. I always say like I'm grateful for that. But my nature is actually very internal. You know, like I really do have a strong Scorpio dominance in my chart as well. I've got Pluto and Saturn in Scorpio. And so I'm very Scorpio dominant. And what that means, your rising sign tells you how you find yourself. So I find myself through depth seeking and investigation, through intuition and magic and like the esoteric arts, right? And psychology. Scorpios are usually psychologists. So they're always trying to go deeper, which is how I find myself. I have to go deeper. I'm always going deeper into myself because I need to find out who I am, because Scorpio risings actually don't know who they are. That's why they have all these skills that they actually try to extrovert out into the world, but really they need to return them back to themselves. It's kind of funny. And then my moon is Aries. So the Aries archetype is definitely the bold warrior. It's fiery. It's like the leader. It just like jumps in. It's impulsive. It's initiator. And that's me. Like I am that. And Aries moon is also the most instinctual. So it is very wild. Like an Aries moon is a very wild person. And that is also me. So it makes a lot of sense. And knowing those three pieces of myself is a great place to start in terms of understanding who I am. I cannot recommend enough, like I said, a professional astrologer. And also this book is one of my favorites. It's called Astrology for Yourself. It is a workbook that it's very intense, but if you really do want to study astrology, this is one of the best places to start. And then come to one of my workshops because we use this a lot. One of the other books that I really love, this was like my first astrology book, and this was recommended to me by my astrologer, my original astrologer, Heather Horton. And this is the only astrology book you'll ever need. This one was amazing too. I remember like diving into this book and it completely changing my life. And I remember like scrolling through, trying to figure out where all of like my planets were. So like Saturn and Scorpio, I went around and I started writing it down. And then once I started to master my own chart, then I started to go through and try to recognize my kids. So now all my kids' information is in here too, so that I can understand my children better. You want to start with yourself. Always start with yourself. And then another really amazing book is Astrology for the Soul. So, I mean, you can kind of dive in wherever you want. As you grow in your astrology practice, you'll learn more and more. You'll also learn that it's complicated. Like it really is. You take it layer by layer at a time. And I have classes that are coming out. My hope is to have a 300-hour teacher training program by January that I'm going to run predominantly online, but it is very intense. It takes a lot of hours, a lot of training, a lot of processing, a lot of practicing. So all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pull my chart up now so that you can see it and we can talk about different parts of the chart. Okay, so this is my chart. I was born on September 30th at 9:36 a.m. Let me move that. My ruling planet is Pluto because I have Scorpio on the ascendant. I have a grand trine, which has Jupiter in it. And I also have a T-square to both Venus and Mars in the 10th house, which means that I came here to really find a sense of balance between the masculine and the feminine in work, which is a lot of what I do. It also means that I'm really great at working with both feminine and the masculine because they're within a 2-degree orb, meaning that I can work with men and women really well and work. So what we're looking at right here is called the natal wheel of astrology. Your natal chart is basically like a blueprint of the moment that you were born. It tells you a lot about what your soul wanted to do. So I'll kind of backtrack a little bit and tell you what an archetypal or transpersonal astrologer like kind of believes or practices in astrology. And there's so many different types of astrology. I practice Western astrology, esoteric, archetypal, transpersonal astrology, evolutionary astrology. What I'm going to present to you looks a lot like archetypal astrology. And so what we believe essentially is that we are souls. We are formless beings of love connected to full source energy. But when we choose to incarnate on this earth, we decide what kind of roles we're going to play. And a lot of that is dictated by the kind of karma that we have accrued over our lifetimes. So yes, I totally believe in past lives. I believe that our souls just keep going until they come into completion and we ascend. I really do. Some people think I'm weird for that. Whatever. You don't have to believe that. You don't have to believe in astrology for it to be a helpful tool. Because at the end of the day, what I personally use astrology for is as a psychological tool that creates a catalyst or a starting point for me to dig into myself. Okay? So the biggest thing is that these archetypes, they wake up in our personality. And whether or not we agree with them or not, it still forces us to consider what our values are. So if I said something like, oh, you must have had a really hard childhood, and your mind goes to, well, no, I didn't, then we still have this starting point of talking about, well, what was your childhood like, right? Like it creates the thinking process. The same thing with tarot. All of these tools are meant to basically find a way to short circuit into our experience, and our psyche so that we can actually have a starting point for the healing. So what we believe is that essentially when we get here and we are born, our personality and our psyche and our soul projects out through the archetypal characters of the 12 zodiac signs. So we all have all 12 signs within us, and they all project in different areas of our lives, which I'll get to in a second. And I don't know if you study the Enneagram, but it's like most Enneagram masters believe that we have all of the signs in us, all the numbers in us, 1 through 9. It's just one of them is where we need to do the most work because we get stuck. So like I'm an Enneagram 4, which means I want to be unique. So it's like in this lifetime where I get stuck the most is by wanting to be unique, which isn't surprising to me because I've got Leo up here at the top of my chart. I've got an Aries moon that makes me want to be an individual, but I've got a Libra sun in the 11th house, which says that in order for me to function, I have to expand consciousness and learn how to not be such an individual, but actually be a part of the collective, right? Like that's where my power is not being an individual, but a part of the collective. So we all have, like, it all merges together. It works really well and cohesively. I think that both inform the other. I personally think astrology is the most effective and accurate personality typing tool because it's so beyond the self. It gets into the soul. And that's the kind of work that I'm trying to do is soul level. Not that there's anything wrong with personality or self work. I think that those are absolutely necessary and parts of the whole thing. But if you really want to get into like why you came here and like what's really hidden, then astrology is an amazing tool for that. So all of that being said, we have all astrology parts within us. The wheel of astrology, each one of these houses, so you see where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These represent different parts of our psyche. And I'll pull up a picture here in a minute, and it's in the files on the Rewilding Church page. But essentially what this is like your first house is the house of how you discover yourself. And the 7th house over here, which is the opposite, is the polarity, is the other. So what you have here from the ascendant crossing this line across to this side over here on the 7th house is what we call the descendant. This is what we call the line of consciousness. This becomes a conscious mirror. So over here is the self, and over here is the other. And they are absolute opposites. So what means is that you will naturally attract people that are the opposite of you to help you grow into figuring out who you are because it's a natural mirror. So each one of the houses represent different things. The first house of astrology, it tells you how you discover yourself. It's you, it's self, it's the I am. The second is the house of things that you value and want to own and possess. It's also things like your finances. The 3rd house is the house of communication, early childhood, and perception. The 4th house is the house of your home, your emotions, and your mother. The 5th house is the house of creative self-expression, art, sexuality, children, and your father. The 6th house is the house of service and daily routine and your body, like your physical body and your health. Your 7th house is the house of relationships, like marriage. Your 8th house is the house of the transformation, how you transform, how you close things out in your life, how you divorce, how you die, how you accrue inheritances, and taxes, power, all of those things, and the occult. So hidden things like mysteries. The 9th house is the house of higher learning. This is things like college, education, consciousness, religion, dogma. Right here, the center of your chart, this piece right here, this is called your midheaven. This is how you shine your brightest. Your 10th house is the house of career, reputation. The 11th house is the house of your friends and large group. It's also your goals and your end of life desires. And your 12th house is the house of your subconscious mind, super subconscious. It's also like your psyche, like your mental health, as well as institutions, things like prisons or hospitals. And then the other aspect of the 12th house is spirituality. This is like spirituality that's more like your internal process of meditation. It's not as much of like this outward esoteric or this outward like external type of seeking of religion. So within all of these, we have these different planets. Sometimes there are not planets in the houses, and all that means is that this house in this lifetime is not as much of a focus. So sometimes you can have what's called a stellium in a house. A stellium means that you have at least 3 to 4 planets in one sign. It creates a predominant part of the personality. So sometimes people are like, I don't really identify with my Capricorn sun. and they have like 4 or 5 planets in Pisces. And it's like, yeah, of course you're not going to, because you're basically Pisces. Your personality is projecting strongly as a Pisces, which is very different than a Capricorn. A Pisces is all about flow and sensitivity and sweetness and love. And a Capricorn just wants to get shit done. It wants dependability, right? They're very opposite of one another. So understanding your chart and like where you have what's like large predominant pieces of energy tells you a lot about what you actually came here to learn. So, you know, we have like what we call the 4 quadrants of the chart. Over here is our AC. Over here is our DC. I always laugh. Down here is the IC, which tells us like where does our power come from. And up here is how we exert our power, which is our midheaven. And so again, like I said, I tend to explain from my own chart. So I'm Scorpio rising. I find myself as a Scorpio. I tend to attract Taurus. I need Taurus. Taurus helps me grow, right? Taurus helps me find balance. Then down here at the bottom where I get my power is Aquarius, being very, very new agey and very, very driven by humanitarian goals. And the way that I exert my power is like a Leo. So when I'm in my highest power, I'm seen. I'm in front of a camera, or I'm allowing myself to be seen. And so this is like your general understanding. Okay, all of these little things over here, all these planets, they show you where you have like these aspects of your personality that bring forth certain things. So like I said in the beginning of the video, astrology is incredibly layered. Then to go the next layer is in here where we have our internal aspects, where the planets are essentially communicating to one another. There's many, many aspects. And then we have what's called transits, which means that, here, I'll pull up a transit. Okay, so now my natal wheel is in here. This is me. This is the energy that's going around right now. Okay, these are the planets that are transiting. So when the planets transit, if they land on top of your natal stuff, so like Venus is coming up on my Venus once we get to Virgo season. I'm about to have a Venus return and I'm about to have a Mars return. So these are important aspects. And then the sun is like right on top of my midheaven right now, which has been really driving me to get my message out into the world over the last week. It's been putting an enormous amount of pressure on me to get it out, right? It's because it's being seen. Then, you know, down here, I've got the Capricorn confluence. You can see the moon right here. You can see they're all conjunct, okay? And so what happens is like, you remember how I said a stellium is like 1, 2, 3, 4. This would be 4 planets in Capricorn. So if a child was born today, they would have a Capricorn stellium, and they would have a stellium in Leo too. So they would be very bold and passionate and have like these big creative ideas, and they would have the discipline to do the work. So a child that was born right now would be very successful with whatever visions they put through out into the world, especially because, you know, Mercury's getting back over here into Leo, and, you know, we're kind of like in a little bit of like a break of some of the chaos from all the other stuff, especially once we get to this full moon. We're kind of like coming through a big culmination phase. It's going to slow down until we get to, you know, around Thanksgiving, fall. And so anyways, all of that being said, is this is like I said, the basics. What I really encourage you to do is just start to take one sign at a time. And again, like I said, I cannot, like, you just need a book, you know, that walks you through it, and then come to my classes. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm a good teacher. I'll teach you how to do this stuff step by step. The other aspect that most people don't know is that these things right here, you will know what you have, where you have them, by understanding the astrological glyphs. So you want to spend some time getting to know, what does the astrological glyph of Scorpio look like? It looks like an M with a stinger on the tail, like a scorpion, right? Sag is the arrow. So Sag looks like an arrow. Lululemon looks like Leo. So the Lululemon looks like a Leo sign, right? Cancer looks like 69. So you kind of like, Gemini is the twin, so it looks like a 2. You know, Taurus really does look like a bull. Aries looks like a ram. Pisces is like a fish. So it's like you want to get to know the glyphs. The more that you get to know the glyphs, the more you'll be able to start to understand like the astrology language. And because so much of it is very esoteric and very symbolic. So hopefully that answers a lot of your questions. You know, the biggest thing is that if you really want to become a student of astrology, you just have to commit. It also looks like having a million books, like listening to podcasts, like going to classes, and of like really being diligent in it and being okay with having like a million books out in front of you and pages and pointing and pointing and pointing and doing this it looks very esoteric. Like it looks occult. You're just like all these papers around you as you're learning, and that's just kind of what it looks like. I don't know. Any professional astrologer will tell you that it's a like full immersion. You're learning a new language. It really is. You're learning a new language. So, you know, the last piece that I'll show you, which is really when you start to get to advanced astrology, is learning how to use an ephemeris. So an ephemeris will tell you, like, when you know the different degrees of the signs and all that, when you can start to basically predict dates of when, you know, different conjunctions will happen, like how it could change people's lives or things like that. We have online technology now that's not as necessary. But when you first start learning astrology and you really want to get to know it, you should have an ephemeris. You should be able to know how to use an ephemeris too. So all that being said, hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this wasn't too long. And like I said, I have all these classes coming out, 300-hour teacher training program for the esoteric arts. So it's going to be tarot, astrology, basic alchemy of spirituality. All of those things are coming. They just take time to create the programming around. So hopefully this was helpful to you, and big love. You can find me at themysticandmundane@gmail.com, or you can follow me really easy at The Church Witch on Instagram, Facebook, or any other social media site. You'll find me at The Church Witch. I hope you have a great night. I'll talk to you later. Bye.